The morning sun had barely peeked through Seattle's characteristic gray clouds when Sarah Chen tied her black apron around her waist at the Morning Brew Cafe. The small coffee shop, nestled between towering office buildings downtown, was her second home for the past 2 years. The familiar scent of freshly ground coffee beans and warm pastries filled the air as she prepared for another day of serving the city's bustling breakfast crowd. Sarah wasn't just any waitress. She was the kind of person who remembered her regular customers' orders by heart and could brighten anyone's morning with her genuine smile. At just 23, she carried more responsibility than most people her age. Every tip she earned went straight into a carefully managed fund for her younger siblings' college education. Since their parents' accident 3 years ago, Sarah had stepped up as the family's backbone, determined to keep her brother and sister's dreams of higher education alive. The morning rush was in full swing, with professionals streaming in for their daily caffeine fix. Sarah moved with practiced grace between tables, balancing trays of steaming lattes and fresh muffins. Her coworkers often marveled at how she maintained her cheerful demeanor even during the most hectic moments. "Order for table 7." She called out with enthusiasm, delivering a perfect cappuccino to a grateful customer who had become a regular largely because of her warm service. The cafe's worn wooden floors creaked beneath her feet as she wiped down tables and reorganized sugar packets. Each corner of the Morning Brew held memories, from the vintage coffee grinder by the window where she'd had her first training session, to the wall of customer photos where her bright smile appeared multiple times in Employee of the Month celebrations. The morning light streaming through the large front windows created dancing patterns on the exposed brick walls, adding to the cozy atmosphere that made regulars feel at home. Between serving customers, Sarah checked her phone quickly, smiling at a text from her sister about acing her latest high school exam. This was why she worked so hard. Every extra shift, every friendly interaction that might lead to a better tip, it was all for them. She tucked the phone away just as the bell above the door chimed, announcing new customers. Sarah took a deep breath, straightened her name tag, and turned to greet whoever had just walked in, ready to offer the same warm welcome she extended to everyone who entered the Morning Brew. What she didn't know was that this ordinary Tuesday morning was about to become anything but ordinary, and her life would change in ways she never expected. The next customer through that door would test not just her patience and professionalism, but would spark a chain of events that would ripple through the entire city. The cafe's peaceful morning atmosphere shattered like fine china when Victoria Blackwood strutted through the door. Her Louboutin heels clicked against the wooden floor, drawing attention from every corner of the Morning Brew. Her designer handbag, worth more than 3 months of Sarah's salary, swung carelessly as she gestured with one perfectly manicured hand, speaking loudly into her AirPods about $1 million property deal. Victoria's presence commanded attention, but not in the way she intended. Regular customers exchanged knowing glances. They'd seen her type before. Her blonde hair was styled in an expensive cut that screamed, "I want to speak to the manager," and her Chanel suit seemed almost comically overdressed for a neighborhood coffee shop. The line at the counter grew as Victoria paced back and forth, deep in her phone conversation. "No, darling, I told them the penthouse isn't going for a penny less than $3 million. She barked into her phone, ignoring the increasingly irritated customers waiting behind her. Sarah stood patiently at the register, her smile unwavering despite the growing tension. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Sarah cleared her throat gently. "Excuse me, ma'am. Would you like to place your order?" Her voice was soft but clear, professional yet friendly, the same tone she used with every customer. Victoria's head snapped up as if she'd been personally offended by the interruption. "Can't you see I'm in the middle of something important?" Victoria hissed, covering her microphone. But the growing murmurs from the waiting customers forced her hand. With an exaggerated eye roll, she told her caller to hold and turned to Sarah with a look that could curdle milk. "Fine. I want a triple, venti, half-sweet, non-fat, caramel macchiato. Extra hot. And I mean actually hot, Not lukewarm like you people usually serve it, Victoria demanded, each word dripping with condescension. She wrinkled her nose at Sarah's name tag, as if reading it might somehow contaminate her. Sarah's fingers danced across the register with practiced efficiency, repeating the order back perfectly. "That'll be $7.85, please," she said, maintaining her composure even as Victoria loudly scoffed at the price. The real estate mogul threw a $10 bill on the counter, snapping, "Keep the change," in a tone that made it sound more like an insult than a tip. Little did Victoria know, her perfectly curated public image was about to crumble faster than a cookie in hot coffee. The next few minutes would transform her from a respected businesswoman into the internet's newest villain, and all because she couldn't be bothered to show a young waitress basic human dignity. The tension in the morning brew reached its boiling point, just as Sarah carefully carried Victoria's precisely made coffee to where she stood, still loudly discussing property values on her phone. The other customers watched with a mix of concern and curiosity, sensing the storm that was about to break. "Here's your triple venti half-sweet non-fat caramel macchiato. Extra hot, Mom," Sarah announced politely, holding out the steaming cup. Victoria paused her call, grabbed the cup, and took a small sip. Her face immediately twisted into an expression of exaggerated disgust. "This is not extra hot," Victoria shrieked, her voice hitting a pitch that made several customers wince. She jabbed a finger at the cup's lid thermometer, which clearly showed the ideal drinking temperature. "I specifically asked for extra hot. Are you people completely incompetent?" Sarah maintained her professional demeanor, though her hands trembled slightly. "I apologize if it's not to your satisfaction, ma'am. I'd be happy to remake it for you right away." But Victoria wasn't interested in solutions. In a moment that would soon become infamous across social media, she yanked the lid off the coffee cup and flung its contents directly at Sarah. The scalding liquid splashed across Sarah's chest and arms, soaking through her white uniform shirt. "Maybe now you'll learn what hot means," Victoria screamed, her composed socialite facade crumbling completely. Then, as if the physical assault wasn't enough, she launched into a tirade of racial slurs that made everyone in the cafe gasp. "You people never get anything right. I want to speak to your manager right now." The cafe fell dead silent except for the sound of coffee dripping from Sarah's clothes onto the floor. The young waitress stood frozen, her skin burning from the hot coffee, tears welling in her eyes but refusing to fall. The dignity with which she held herself in that moment would later be described by witnesses as heartbreaking and inspiring. Several phones were already recording, capturing every second of Victoria's meltdown. The woman seemed oblivious to the fact that her actions were being documented from multiple angles, too caught up in her entitled rage to notice the horrified expressions on everyone's faces. A customer rushed forward with napkins for Sarah, while another called out, "Someone call the police." Victoria's face suddenly shifted as she realized that her actions had crossed a line she couldn't step back from. But instead of showing remorse, she doubled down, reaching into her designer purse and pulling out business cards. "I own half the properties in this neighborhood," she announced, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "I'll have this place shut down by the end of the week." Little did she know, those would be the last business cards she'd ever hand out as a respected real estate mogul. Among the shocked customers that morning, Marcus Thompson lowered his morning paper, his experienced eyes taking in every detail of the scene. As a civil rights lawyer who had fought discrimination cases for 20 years, he knew exactly what he was witnessing. His hand was already pulling out his business card while Jenny Park, seated in the corner, professionally handled her phone's camera, capturing everything with the skilled eye of a veteran news reporter. The cafe had transformed into an impromptu courtroom of public opinion. Cell phones pointed at Victoria from every angle, recording her continued tirade. A young college student live-streamed the incident to TikTok, while a retired teacher carefully noted down every racial slur Victoria had used, her hands shaking with anger as she wrote. "I've seen a lot of ugliness in courtrooms," Marcus spoke up, his deep voice cutting through Victoria's ranting. But this takes discrimination to a new level. He walked over to Sarah, who was being helped by other customers to dry her uniform. The coffee had left angry red marks on her skin, visible through her soaked shirt. Jenny Park had already switched to reporter mode, quietly interviewing witnesses around her. "It was completely unprovoked," whispered a regular customer, an elderly man who came in every morning for his plain black coffee. "Sarah is the sweetest girl you'll ever meet. She remembers my grandchildren's names and always asks about them." A group of high school students who had been studying in the corner shared their videos with Jenny, their young faces a mixture of shock and determination to see justice done. "We come here every week," one girl explained, her voice trembling with emotion. "Sarah helps us with our math homework sometimes during her breaks." The evidence was mounting by the second. Security cameras had captured everything from multiple angles. The cafe's Wi-Fi was working overtime as uploads began hitting social media platforms. Victoria's face and name would soon be plastered across every major social network, her actions documented in high definition from at least a dozen different perspectives. Marcus handed his card to Sarah, speaking gently but firmly. "This isn't just assault. It's a hate crime, and every person in this cafe is a witness." His words carried the weight of decades fighting similar battles in court, though he'd rarely seen such a clear-cut case of discrimination and assault caught so thoroughly on camera. Meanwhile, Jenny had already contacted her news desk. Within minutes, a news van would be parked outside the Morning Brew, ready to broadcast this story of blatant racism and its consequences across Seattle's airways. Victoria's morning meltdown was about to become breaking news, and her carefully constructed social image was crumbling faster than the biscotti in the cafe's display case. James Martinez, owner of the Morning Brew, burst through the kitchen doors just as Victoria was threatening to shut down his cafe. His normally cheerful face was set in stone as he surveyed the scene, his best employee standing there soaked and burned, while a wealthy woman continued her entitled rant. "I don't care who you think you are," James announced, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd built his business from nothing. "You're banned from this establishment. For life." He moved to stand protectively in front of Sarah, pulling out his phone to dial 911. The sight of their normally easygoing boss, this angry, made several regular customers sit up straighter. Victoria's face turned an impossible shade of red. "Do you know who I am?" she sputtered, but her question was met with the sound of police sirens approaching. Two officers entered the cafe, their presence immediately changing the atmosphere. Officer Rodriguez took one look at Sarah's burned skin and called for medical assistance. While paramedics tended to Sarah's burns, customers lined up to give their statements to the police. Each person had a different angle of the incident recorded on their phones, creating an airtight case. Victoria's protests grew increasingly desperate as she realized the serious legal trouble she was in. "I want to press charges," Sarah said quietly but firmly, surprising everyone who knew her gentle nature. The paramedic wrapping her arm nodded encouragingly, documenting the first-degree burns on her official report. Victoria's face drained of color as she heard the medical terminology being used. The cafe had become a crime scene. Evidence was collected, statements were taken, and photographs of Sarah's injuries were documented. Regular customers hugged her, leaving their contact information as witnesses. The elderly man who came in every morning for his black coffee left a $100 bill in the tip jar, his eyes misty. James announced that he was closing the cafe for the day, but paying all his employees their full wages. As Victoria was escorted out in handcuffs, her designer handbag now clutched by perfectly manicured hands that trembled with fear rather than rage, she finally seemed to understand the gravity of her actions. But it was too late. Her reputation was already beginning its spectacular fall from grace. Within an hour of Victoria's arrest, the internet exploded with viral videos of her coffee-throwing tantrum. The hashtag Coffee Karen started trending, with the original TikTok video hitting over 1 million views in just 2 hours. Social media detectives quickly identified Victoria Blackwood as the CEO of Elite Estates, one of Seattle's most prestigious real estate firms. The videos spread like wildfire across platforms. Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook were flooded with different angles of the incident, each showing Victoria's unhinged behavior in crystal clear detail. Her business profile was bombarded with negative reviews, while her carefully curated social media presence crumbled under an avalanche of angry comments. Local news stations interrupted their regular programming to cover the story. Jenny Park's report aired first, featuring interviews with witnesses and shocking footage of the assault. "In my 15 years of reporting," Jenny said on camera, "I've rarely seen such a clear case of both assault and racial discrimination caught on video." Victoria's phone wouldn't stop ringing, but not with the usual calls from wealthy clients. Instead, it was her publicity team desperately trying to manage the crisis. One by one, her high-profile real estate clients began publicly distancing themselves from her. The luxury watch company that had featured her in their recent ad campaign quietly deleted all posts containing her image. Her business partners called an emergency meeting. By evening, Elite Estates issued a statement announcing Victoria's immediate removal as CEO. The company's stock price took a nosedive as more videos surfaced, including security camera footage that captured the incident from yet another damning angle. Social media influencers who had once praised Victoria's boss lady lifestyle now shared the video with captions condemning her actions. Her sponsored content deals evaporated within hours. A makeup brand she'd collaborated with for years issued a public statement severing all ties, emphasizing their zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. The internet had become judge, jury, and executioner of Victoria's reputation. By sunset, the woman who had started her day as a respected business leader had become the internet's most hated villain, her carefully built empire crumbling faster than she could hit delete on her social media accounts. 1 week after the infamous coffee incident, the Morning Brew had transformed into a symbol of community solidarity. Lines stretched around the block as people came not just for coffee, but to show their support. The tip jar overflowed daily, with customers insisting their change be added to what they now called Sarah's Fund. Sarah's story had touched hearts across the city. A GoFundMe page, started by Marcus Thompson, had raised over $100,000 for her siblings' college education. Local businesses offered scholarships to her brother and sister, ensuring their academic dreams would become reality. Sarah herself had received job offers from major companies, but she chose to stay at the Morning Brew, saying, "This is where I found my second family." Victoria's legal troubles mounted daily. The district attorney filed criminal charges for assault and hate crime violations. Marcus Thompson, representing Sarah in a civil lawsuit, had built an airtight case with overwhelming evidence from dozens of witnesses and videos. Victoria's attempts to quietly settle out of court were firmly rejected. The incident sparked a citywide movement. Restaurant owners collaborated to create a Service Workers Protection Act, which was quickly picked up by the city council. Local businesses displayed zero tolerance for discrimination signs in their windows. Coffee shops across Seattle started training programs teaching staff how to handle similar situations, with James Martinez often invited as a guest speaker. Victoria's fall from grace was complete. Her luxury condo was sold at a loss, her social circle evaporated, and her business reputation was irreparably damaged. She was last seen leaving the courthouse after pleading guilty to all charges, no designer handbag in sight, looking nothing like the powerful CEO she'd once been. The Morning Brew itself underwent a transformation. James used the publicity to expand his business with a second location, making Sarah a partner in the enterprise. The original cafe's wall now featured a mural depicting hands of different colors holding coffee cups, with the words "Kindness Served Daily" written beneath it. 1 year later, Sarah stood behind the counter of the Morning Brew, still serving coffee with her signature smile. But now she wore a manager's badge, and her story had become a powerful reminder that karma, like coffee, is best served hot. The cafe had become more than just a coffee shop. It was a testament to how one moment of darkness could give birth to a movement of light, proving that sometimes the best responses to hate are grace, dignity, and a community willing to stand together.